younger generation, but you wouldn't think so based on my skills with technology. But anyways, hopefully you can hear me. Um, if you would turn with me to uh, Daniel chapter 5. Daniel chapter 5, and no, I didn't pick this just because it's my name. I happen to think this is a very good lesson for us. But as you turn there, I want to paint a little picture in your mind. Let's just say, what we'll do for the first illustration, you get invited over for dinner by someone at church, and but they just want you to help them out with a favor. And yes, this favor is going to be you going out of your way. It's going to take some effort, some time, some energy. Um, but you say, okay, I'll go ahead and do it, and so you end up after the fact going to their place for dinner, and they say, "Don't worry, it's going to be a wonderful dinner. Your belly is going to be full. It's going to be wonderful." And so you're actually saying, "Oh, they're making it a surprise, so it must be good." Um, so you go through the preparation, and you get in the kitchen, you sit down at the table. It's a great setup. Just looks lovely, beautiful. Um, and they bring that hot dish over, and they open it, and what do you see? A nice, delicious, scrumptious serving of some cauliflower and some broccoli and some, if that doesn't fill you up, some Brussels sprouts on the side. And they just say, "Oh, we can't wait to start eating." And you have kind of that look on your face where you smile, but you don't really feel like smiling, but you're doing it anyways because you want to, mask it. Um, well, what would you say? It's not what you expected, right? We could say the same thing. Um, Say there's a group of guys at church, some of the men, or we could even say this to the younger generation. Uh, Say there's a really fun event that's going to go on at church, and you just can't wait. You're going to have a blast. But when you get to the person's house you're supposed to meet at, what they didn't tell you was that fun event was pulling weeds. Who wants to do it? Who wants to do some yard work? Again, it's not what you would expect. And why? Because you don't see that as good to you. You don't see that as a great reward, as something that's important to you, right? We were in, not too long ago, we were in Hebrews, and we talked about how these characters considered the rewards that God gave greater than the earthly ones. Moses, he didn't care about the riches of Egypt and the lifestyle he could have had over there. He considered the Lord much better, right? But then once we consider that lesson, we have to ask, what does that come down to? What it comes down to is what is important to you. What is the treasure in your heart? We heard a lesson going through this Life of Christ um, topic about how Jesus said, don't store up for yourself treasures on earth. Basically, all these things are going to decay, they're going to go away. But when you store up your treasures in heaven, when God and the kingdom is important to you, nobody can take that away from you but you. You have to give those things up. No one can take them away. And we see the same thing here in Daniel. If you know, what is your treasure? According to what Jesus said. He said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So what it comes down to when it comes to your reward is what is really important to your heart. Is Jesus the nice uh, cooked perfect steak and mashed potatoes to you, or is he the broccoli and the cauliflower? Or is the world and the riches and all the other things you can have, is that the good meal to you? Which one is it? Well, in Daniel 5, we begin reading. Uh, Look at verse 1. Belshazzar the king held a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles, just like that dinner we're talking about. And he was drinking wine in the presence of the 1,000. When Belshazzar tasted the wine, he gave orders to bring the gold and silver vessels which Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines might drink from them. Now, notice what's repeated here: nobles. These are the rulers, and it keeps getting repeated. This is a great feast. Important people are at this feast, the nobles. And pay attention to what he's already mentioned: wine, gold, silver. Yes, it says wives and concubines. I'm not saying that. The Bible says that, but we know how the world works and operates. What's important to these people. Um, then verse 3. Then they brought the gold vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God, which was in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines drank from them again. There you see again, nobles, the king. This is being emphasized. Verse 4, they drank the wine and praised the gods of gold, silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Now notice what he's doing here. Basically, he's saying these are nobles, these are important people, these are the rulers, the kings, the rich people. What he's doing is he's showing the rewards they have. If you went and circled all those, you'd see gold, silver, wine, wives, concubines, vessels. Again, repeated gold, silver, bronze, and they have all of it. Well, by the time you get to uh, verse 6, after you see the writing on the wall and it stops everyone um dead in their tracks, it says, verse 6, the king's face grew pale, and his thoughts alarmed him, and his hip joints went slack, and his knees began knocking together. It says, the king called aloud to bring the conjurers, the Chaldeans, and the diviners. The king spoke and said to the wise men of Babylon. So these people, the Chaldeans, all these people who think they can call on the divine, these are looked at as the wise men. Look in verse 8. Then all the king's wise men. He called these people because he thought they were wise. Look at verse 11. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is a spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, illumination, insight, and what? And wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods were found in him. He's talking about Daniel, but basically the king is looking for some wise people. Now drop down to verse 14. Now I have heard about you that a spirit of the gods is in you, and that illumination, insight, and extraordinary wisdom have been found in you. Wisdom that is not ordinary. Now, if you go through this chapter, what you're going to see is this. All the people that the king, or who the people who told the king were wise, they didn't really deliver. But what is that extraordinary spirit, or that different spirit that Daniel had? Well, all you have to do is look down. Um, when you get down to verse 23, when Daniel talks to the king, he says, you have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before you. And you and your nobles, your wives, and your concubines have been drinking wine from them, and you have praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see, hear, understand. But the God in whose hand are your life breath and all your ways, you have not glorified. If you read verse 21, Daniel calls God the Most High God. And then verse 18 and on, what you're going to see is that um, Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king who had everything, his spirit is compared to Daniel's spirit because his spirit is called a wisdom of arrogance and pride and conceit, versus Daniel's extraordinary spirit is one that glorifies and exalts God. Now, the part I want to focus on is verse 17. Because when he needed this explained to him, and Daniel gives him the answer, he offers Daniel a reward. And what would those rewards be? Well, all the other rulers, they had the wine, they had the gold, the silver, all these great things. Everything mentioned, that means Daniel could have had that too because he could have become a ruler. Um, but what is his response when he's offered that? In verse 17, it says, Daniel answered and said before the king, keep your gifts for yourself, or give your rewards to someone else. However, I will read the inscription to the king and make the interpretation known to him. Even as Christians, we can see how some of that stuff would be hard to turn down. We can look at the gold, how shiny it looks, the silver. There's different temptations for everybody. But the spirit Daniel has, it's almost like he's saying, no, I don't want those. I'm not interested in that. You see, what I'm getting at is those things weren't even important to him. Those things didn't even matter to him. It was like that was dirt to him because he already had God. Ephesians, we're blessed with every spiritual blessing. We already quoted from Jesus, you know, when your treasure is God, it doesn't decay or rust. So my point is very simple tonight. Do you strive to have that type of attitude? Do you strive to have the spirit where those things do have a hold on you, those things are important? Or do you want to have the spirit where you say, all I really care about is exalting and glorifying God? Because if you have that spirit, one, Daniel was blessed anyways, but he really wouldn't care if he was blessed anyways. He already had the greatest blessing of all. And you realize that whole book is about kingdoms rise, kingdoms fall, but there is one king and one kingdom that reigns and lasts forever. And we have him right here in our midst already. And he can't be taken away. So I ask, what is important to you? Is Jesus really all the world to you, or is there something in the world that is more important to you than Jesus? Because there's many reasons. We sing that song 1,000 or 10,000 reasons. You have every reason in the world, in the universe, to have God as your treasure. And you already have him. So that's really the only message I wanted to bring to you tonight. My memory fails me if we usually do an invitation, but yeah, I think it's true. Everyone would agree here that anytime you need prayers, the church is happy to pray for you. Anytime you have a need, the church is happy to hear it. Um, so I just want to leave this with us as we go through the week. Let's not let that leave our mind. Yes, we could gain these rewards, but so what? We believe this book, which we should. We already have an eternal kingdom. Babylon fell, Greece fell, Rome fell. America's not going to last forever. Even if Jesus comes back, well, that's going to be the end right there because Jesus is back. We already have our citizenship in the eternal one. Let's not let anyone take that out of our mind this week and be distracted and sidetracked. Because when you have that, really, a Christian will not be able to be unjoyful. When you keep that in your mind, you are going to stay happy because you have God. So I want to offer that tonight. I want to appreciate me being able to bring you that short message. But if you have a need, please come as we stand and sing.